Last week, I used a term, the trust recession, and that really seemed to strike a chord with some people.
I think we're going through what we might call a trust recession. We are more distrustful of politicians, and we are more distrustful of media and expertise in general than perhaps ever before. And not all of that is unwarranted, but I do fear it has also, unfortunately, perhaps filtered down into our personal encounters with each other as well. We don't trust each other.
Now, I didn't get to talk about this idea a whole lot, so I wanted to come back to it and pick up on some of these ideas here. Because I think when we think of trust recession, I think part of the reason that resonates with people is because we all sort of have this sense of society in general becoming maybe less trustworthy, but also less trusting of each other. And I think we all kind of feel that, and not just in our relationship with the media or politicians, but also sort of slowly drifting down into our relationship with our neighbors that we might not know very well. And somebody asked me after the sermon, well, what is the antidote for that? How do we actually bring ourselves out from this? Do we stop watching the news? Do we ban social media? There's different attempts to do that in culture right now. Different movements to step away from some of these things that very may well be contributing to this distrust that's growing amongst us. But I want to suggest actually probably the first step in pushing back against this very large social phenomenon that's impacting us all starts very simply. And it starts at home. It starts with believing that there could be a friendship on the other side of the person that we've just met. Actually believing the best about them and wanting to get to know them. And here's why I think that, because there's actually really good social science data that tells us the more friendships, the more close friendships that we self-identify with. If I was to ask you, how many close friends do you have in your life? That number has been steadily dropping over the years. That's a real concern in and of itself. But there's also data that tells us the more people you identify as a close friend, the more likely you are to exhibit a whole host of positive social behaviors. You are more likely to volunteer, not just in your church, but in your community, in local organizations. You are more likely to donate money. Again, I'm not just talking about religion and church. I'm talking about you are more likely to support causes that you feel good about. You are more likely to be politically active. You are more likely to know the people who live in local proximity around you. Now, there's a good question about whether that is correlation or causation. Does the social traits that lead people to have more close friends also lead them to all of these social behaviors, or does the fact that people have close friends lead them into these positive social behaviors? I don't really know. I think we're still figuring that out and researching it, but there is a very strong relationship between these two things. And I think that doing the work to cultivate friendships with your neighbor, with your coworker, with the person that you encounter, and maybe at first you don't think you have a lot in common with them, but you're just willing to see where that goes. I think that leads to all kinds of positive benefits, many, many steps down the line, and that is actually what will help us to push back against the trust recession and learn to trust each other more. The problem might not be that media is feeding us scary and bad narratives all the time, although that is certainly happening. I'm not denying that at all. But the problem might be that we are losing touch and friendship with the people around us. And so the first step is to engage in the work that it takes to build friendships, reconnecting with people maybe you've lost touch with, going out of your way to find those people that are on your Facebook or your Instagram friend list and actually messaging them, giving them a call, getting together with them for a coffee to see how they're doing and what their kids are up to. Now, arranging play dates with your kids and your friends' kids and getting together and just being in the backyard together. That kind of investment in friendships that are going to be there when you need them down the line will help you be a more trusting person. And if enough of us can do that, maybe we can actually stem the tide of some of these unhealthy trends that are happening in the larger picture of our social environments. So I don't have a great answer. I don't know how we fix all of society's ills, but I do know that durable, lasting, committed relationships and friendships are a core part of what it means to be human. And I'm not surprised that when we feel like we have less of that, we just feel less motivation, less energy, less desire to be positively socially engaged in a whole host of things around us. So is it important for you to volunteer? Yes. Is it important for you to donate and give money to causes you care about? Yes. All of those things. But maybe it starts with developing some friendships. So jump on Facebook, find that old friend, and go grab a beer, grab a coffee, see how they're doing, check in, schedule a play date with your kids. You might be surprised by how those small steps can impact your spiritual, your political, your just mental well-being in the world. And if enough of us do that, maybe we actually can change the world.
And I'll be honest here, I'm not the kind of person that has a lot of friends. It's just not easy for me. But I also know that I have been blessed with extraordinary relationships with a very small handful of friends that I absolutely could not have engineered for myself. People that have come into my life from surprising places. People have found their way back into my life in ways that I never expected. And the only common denominator in all of those relationships is that at some point I found the courage to be willing to see what would happen if I opened the door just a crack. And the truth is, when you do that, sometimes you get burned. But sometimes you discover joy on the other side of a friendship that feels like nothing but grace. The kind that you couldn't engineer and you wouldn't have expected, the kind that takes a very long story to explain or an inside joke to properly understand. But the kind of joy that comes from a friendship that has room for us to simply be present and ourselves.